My name is Sam Jenks, and welcome to another episode of The Way We Source, a podcast hosted by Kodiak Hub, where we share our talks with procurement practitioners, leaders, experts, consultants, content gurus, and people that we find downright inspiring. As always, diving into the role that sourcing and procurement plays in the way we live. If you like today's episode, make sure to rate the program and give us a follow. Today's guest is someone who's spent more than 2 decades navigating procurement across global giants like Mars and Innocent, and then later guiding fast-growth, private equity-backed brands through scale, volatility, and transformation. He's known for helping teams get laser-sharp on advanced cost modeling, lock in resilient supply chains in markets that never sit still, and turn sustainability from a buzzword into something that actually shows up in the P&L. He approaches procurement like an adventurer. Wide terrain, high stakes, and real outcomes with unapologetically strong views on SRM, technology, and on why the function of procurement needs to stop playing small. We are super happy to have today the founder of Frost Procurement Adventurer, Simon Frost. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you listening.
We're super happy to have you. And like I asked most of our guests, procurement. Did the role find you, or did you find the role?
I have to be very open about how I found the role. So I started my career back in the year 2000. I'm actually a manufacturing and mechanical engineer by training, and I was very lucky to get a place on the Mars graduate scheme in England. And I thought I was going to be kind of spending my life installing chocolate lines. I'm an engineer after all. But I was rotated into what they then called, in fact, commercial on my third placement. Little did I know that commercial was not sales. In fact, at Mars, they called procurement commercial. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I buying? Am I selling? And they said, no, you're going to be buying. I was like, okay, I got it. And anyway, so I started off, and I realized very quickly that this function of buying a procurement then was going to be an extremely interesting place to have my career.
That's an awesome story. You awakened an interesting thought there, because I think that, procurement is typically looked at as the cost saver, right? Whereas Mars very, I would say, intuitively years ago deemed that role as a commercial role, right? Because procurement does have the opportunity to really drive revenue. Do you have any thoughts on why it is that businesses typically see procurement as a saver more than a revenue driver?
I mean, I think there must be a legacy piece here. So if you go back to before I started my procurement career, sort of 30, 40 years ago, it was very much if you like, a back office function, transactional function. I think what companies like Mars did really well is that they spotted that as a minimum, actually could go and obviously deliver cost savings, but there was going to be so much more to it than that, whether it was like supply security, ESG, and what they did really well is they put procurement in the center of the business to drive value across the business.
Yeah, it's cool that they saw it so early as well. You call yourself a procurement adventurer, and I love that language as well. When did the procurement stop feeling like a job and start feeling like an adventure for you, Simon?
Yeah, so Mars was a brilliant place to start my career, and the graduate scheme was a kind of really good foundation. I did that for about 6 years. What that did is that was a springboard to a role setting up procurement at a very famous European company called Innocent Smoothies, Innocent Drinks. I started off, there was no procurement function whatsoever. I had to carve it out from scratch. And literally within a few weeks, I found myself in an adventurer role. And if I might explain the story, it was mango season. And we got the pre-shipment samples in for mango, and they came in, it's fair to say, substandard. In fact, they were not right at all. So we ordered another batch of these little samples. They came the next week, and those also weren't right. And it hinted at a big problem. That was a Friday. On the Sunday, I was on a plane out to India, and literally we had to, the 5,000 tons of mango that we bought was all wrong. It was all at failed quality, and literally had to kind of tour India on a moment's notice trying to find 5,000 tons of mango. And that was a pivotal turning point for me.
Wow. Okay. That's, I wasn't expecting it to be that hands-on. With that being said, it's cool that that's the case. I hear from a lot of people within procurement, the role is so exciting because you get to see the world, you get to get out, you get to be able to be a part of the product that is then coming to market at an early stage, which is at the source, right? What would you say to somebody that's starting out, looking at procurement as a role? How is it that they make it not feel like, for example, a back office role, but start making it feel like an adventuring role, whether they're starting or, for example, to a leader in a business that's looking to be able to bring that same essence into their team?
Yeah, it's a good point. Look, I'm very lucky in my role because I have that, if you like, that physical adventure that I'm often out traveling around the world, sourcing amazing kind of ingredients and products and working with amazing suppliers. But I think it actually starts with the mindset. And the mindset is that there has been a legacy in the past that procurement was deemed a kind of a secondary function, a support function. If ever I hear this, in truth, I give a very robust answer that, crikey, if you look at it, procurement has an impact of 70% of a P&L, looking at the COGS, and that we are certainly no support function. So it starts with the mindset is a total belief that procurement can game change a business. And once you've got that mindset straight, it's like, right, I'm going to really enjoy this adventure of making sure that the procurement team I'm in and the procurement role I'm in has a absolutely transformational impact on the business that I'm working in.
Yeah. That's incredibly essential that the procurement function takes those reins with both hands. Like you said, there's 70% of control of the P&L in their control. And I think that's something that people should not take lightly. 60 seconds. Sum it up for us, Simon. What are you doing today at Frost Procurement Adventurer? And what's the problems that you're obsessed with solving?
Good point. Let's look at the problem first. So I've touched on it, but I'll come back to it. For too long, procurement has been the underdog. Okay, it's been underinvested in. It's in truth been underperforming, and I'm talking sort of 20 years ago, and it's been underappreciated. And I saw this gap. I saw this gap in the market to invest properly in procurement, so that ultimately procurement delivers to a very high standard. I want businesses to go like, wow, this procurement team's amazing in terms of what they deliver us. And ultimately then they feel really appreciated and valued. What I do specifically is that I set up my own business 10 years ago. I am a procurement consultant and I focus on food, drink and pet care sectors. And I'm here to help both massive multinationals on big structural challenges down to exciting fizzy SMEs.
You lived in this world of Mars and Innocent, right? You got to live the corporate, the global multinational. What was that moment when you realized I need to go do something my own way, and also why?
Look, I'm very, very grateful for those two first kind of key employers I had. So Mars gave me that really good kind of commercial grounding, and Innocent was amazing at the kind of entrepreneurial spirit and incredible people I worked with. Come to about 2015, and I worked with some people who, if I was to look at a continuum, are probably less my tribe. Okay, and that really made me think about what mattered in my career. And I had to think, what's right for Simon going forward? Because it's easy to think, hey, success is, becoming a chief procurement officer, having a team of 500. And I had to look very hard at myself in the mirror and go, I like leading a team. I've had teams of 30, 40, but am I a number one leader of people? And I went, you know what? I'm not good enough to lead a team of, say, 500 in the future. And I don't want to, because I love doing the procurement. So after that rather challenging period, and in a way, a kind of forest fire like that was good because it really makes you assess what matters. And I came up with 3 criteria. And criteria was, one was, I've got to do what I love doing, and that's procurement. I've got to do what I'm good at, and that's procurement. And I've got to do it with great people. And those are my criteria I set. And that kind of really squared me on, right, I'm going to set my business. I've been at it now for 10 years, and I count myself the luckiest person in the world.
That's fantastic and excellent, I would say, insights to anyone, that's looking to be able to do something that they wake up in the morning and are excited about, that's going to motivate them, right? Yeah. What do you love doing? What are you good at? And be around good people. It's something that could be applicable in many, many, many ways. So thanks for sharing that as well. When you look at, for example, because you mentioned before the role of procurement, right? You want to step into an organization and have that wow factor to be able to show a procurement organization what good can look like, and the broader enterprise be able to look at that procurement function after you've been there and say, wow, this is a function in the business that is to be reckoned with, right? They are delivering value in various dimensions. You also mentioned though that, for a long time, there's been a lot of underperformance within the procurement space.
Yeah.
What does good look like? But adversely, also, what does the underperforming teams look like today? And what do businesses need to address typically?
Good point. I mean, I want to, if you like, turn into a positive thing, but I think it is good to look at what the fundamental challenges that were there. I think first of all, it's a business responsibility to position procurement properly in the business. So if you call a function like procurement a sort of second-class citizen, a support function, well, that's how they're going to behave. If you go, we really value you, and we're going to resource you properly, and we're going to train you properly, that's how they'll start behaving. So I think the business who cracked this were like, wait a minute, this procurement thing is actually going to be quite good for us. And they positioned procurement the right way. They trained them properly. And they said, then we really respect you to do a great job. Now, of course, procurement has then got to do that job to prove that they're up to it. And what's very exciting for me is to see companies turning from a bit more in the shadows to, well, wait a minute, we can deliver great things. And if you look at all the challenges through sort of Brexit, through COVID, through the geopolitical tensions that we've had over the last 5 years, I think procurement has absolutely stepped up to the plate and delivered like again and again in areas like supply security to show what we can do.
That's a great transition into a topic that I wanted to be able to discuss with you. And prior to the session, you had talked about mapping the SRM market. Yeah, a market that Kodiak ourselves is a tech provider within, and you mentioned it before. You're working primarily with clients within the food and beverage space.
Yeah,
could I ask what was out there in the market when you looked at it that maybe shocked you the most when you looked under the hood?
Yeah, sure. So, in fact, Sam, I think we'd be very good. This is how we got chatting through this kind of whole process of me investigating SRM. So, whilst I'd done really quite a bit of SRM over the last 20 years, what triggered this was that about 2 years ago, one of my clients said, we'd love to launch an SRM program and we'd like it backed up by technology. So what I did is I thought, okay, but I'm going to look at the architecture of what is there in terms of all the different providers and all the different modules that they offer. And I'll be very open. I mean, it looked like the total Wild West to me. There was no formal definition of SRM. It varied completely across the different providers. The bookends were very different. So you could have one company, literally pure play, one module, I don't know, supplier search, for example. And then another company who might do 3 modules, 5 modules, what have you. So yeah, I found in truth Wild West.
When it comes to like the bookends, because we talked about this prior to the episode in preparation, and I thought that was a really interesting concept. We ourselves also sometimes struggle to see that the maturity of an understanding of SRM matches, for example, our strong point of view on the space, right? We look at SRM as a holistic life cycle approach. From registration and intake to qualification to auditing to performance evaluation to ongoing collaboration. It's a plan, do, check, act cycle, right? It is a continuous spectrum. That's the way that Kodiak views it. Now, with that being said, the bookends differ from business to business. What are you seeing when you look at client maturity? What are the bookends that most businesses are putting on SRM? If you had the whiteboard, where would you put the bookends?
Yeah, I think it's good to be clear on kind of what is not in the scope of SRM. So you take something like category management or cost modeling. I mean, okay, it might involve a supplier, but in the cold light today, they are standalone things. For me, SRM, and I love the way you've used this word, it is a holistic piece. So it is naturally, by its very nature, going to be more all-encompassing. And I think then there are certain, there's a whole lot of modules that you can obviously put underneath it. So whether it's spend analysis and segmentation of a supply base, whether it's the due diligence qualification, whether it's supply onboarding, it involves all those things. I think where a company like, whether it's Kodiak or if you like, one of your competitors gets it right, is if they're very clear on what those modules are and they're very clear on where they play and actually importantly, where they don't play. So take, for example, contract management's a classic one. There are standalone providers of contract management. The question is, does an SRM provider also try and wrap that up? Or do they go, actually, hang on a minute, it's best just left to someone else?
Do you think that procurement technology ecosystems have become too complex?
I'll be very open and sort of say in terms of my learning about technology. So there are people who are absolutely out and out tech whizzes, and they have been for sort of, almost since the age of 15 when they first had their first computer. Yeah, I'm not an out and out tech specialist. I'm always very open about that. And I realized this a couple of years ago. And what I'm on is I'm on a journey of I don't have to be the world's best, but I really want to kind of understand the space. And it's fascinating attending conferences like TPW in Amsterdam, who I think are doing a great job to make the technology more accessible and help the procurement professional understand what is out there. But if we were now to take a kind of straw poll of 1,000 procurement professionals, I think actually there'd still be quite a few people who were where I was 2 years ago, which is I don't really know what's out there. So I think there's a great opportunity for them to learn what's available to them.
When you talk about the availability, because I think I agree with you, right? There's an abundance of vendors out there, and the notoriety of the space in the tech category is continuing to grow, which is required for it to get on the budget sheet, right? Yeah. And a CFO to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to invest in procurement technology. Yeah. And there's some Gartner statistics from a year or two ago that show shocking statistics, right? 17% of technology the procurement teams want, they get to buy, meaning that 8 out of the 10 solutions they don't get to buy. Yeah. With that being said, when businesses do buy technology, Gartner and others, based upon the sources, it can differ. 60, sometimes up to 80% of projects fail. Yeah. I guess that I'm curious in getting your opinion, because you said it yourself. Maybe you're not a tech whiz, as you said, quote unquote. I would assume that you have more technical capabilities than you're leading on here, Simon. With that being said, how do we take it from like knowing what's out there in the market to actual application? Where have you seen businesses succeed when they're trying to be able to bring on new technology, and why do they succeed? Yeah.
So for example, just to check your question, you mean, so for example, if I've got a client, when does it work in terms of then putting in new systems? Is that what you mean?
Sure, exactly. Yeah. Because so many other projects fall to the wayside. So when it sticks, when it works, when it's applied and people are using, right? Why is that the case? Is there attributes that you see with your clients and something that you can share with our listeners as to the attributes that they too should work towards? Yeah.
So I think the first thing is being really clear on the architecture. So getting the architecture right, and think about what's the architecture for that business, because the architecture for, if you like, client A of mine actually might be quite different from client B. So, for example, if I've got a client who's in a high growth phase who is trying to find lots of new suppliers, well, one of the modules in there will be like supplier search. Whereas if it's a massive multinational which has got a lot of really old, clunky legacy systems that are very hard to use, well, that architecture in terms of orchestration or what have you will be, again, a very kind of different need state. Similarly, in fact, if I might use an example, I had a client who kind of a bit under $1 billion, well, between, call it 500 million and $1 billion dollars revenue. And they had absolutely no CLM, no contract lifecycle management software at all. And I'm like, how on earth do you manage everything? Where are these physically? Just where are the contracts? And so there was a very clear business need to address that. The first question was one of the existing systems in the existing architecture capable? Does it have a module that we could kind of tap into? We actually realized that there wasn't. And so then what we did is we decided to go for a standalone CLM system. And then it's very important that a company doesn't rush and just go and buy a system. That company's got to think about, well, take CLM. Is it just there for a repository, or is it also there for a repository and a creation? And then we ran a really formal process to select the right vendor. And I would strongly recommend that for, again, anyone doing the software. And I think, again, it's so easy to forget this, but some of the software out there is amazing, like yourselves, like kind of the CLM we looked at, but it's only as good as how good the implementation is. And it's only as good as that post-implementation work to make sure it's really embedded in the business. And so I advise anyone.
So let's get into those pieces. Yes. Let's get into those pieces because you just made it very, very clear. How do you select the right vendor, which I love as well. Yeah. But what were the things that you guys did or the vendor did, implementation and post-implementation, that made it stick, that made a successful project?
Yeah. Yeah. So if I might talk in very basic terms, the first thing is about being really clear on the scope first. So it's like scope, objectives, like project setup. Get that bit right first. what are we trying to achieve here? What's the outcome we're trying to deliver? Okay, we were trying to get all the contracts in one place. We can find what we're trying to deliver value, etc., etc. Then it's about defining the requirements. What exactly is it? What's our shopping list, if you like, that we need to go and kind of deliver on? Then that next step is about, okay, we've got our, if you like, our shopping list, our requirements. Right, how are we going to go and do it? So what, in fact, I did is I mapped, call it the top 20 CLM providers. I did a benchmark. We shortlisted it. We on a very careful tender process. And then, and it's important to have what I call the sniff test, the chemistry test. Well, it's all very well your system saying it does all these things, but actually, is there going to be a good match between the two companies? Of course, then we went and selected one, closed the deal. And that is really, for me, only half the job, because then making sure that the post-contract delivery is really good.
Yeah, understood. And again, when it comes to, sorry, just to double back.
Yeah.
What was it that made it stick in the post-delivery?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is the realization that, in fact, the delivery is much harder than everyone always says. It takes more time. It takes more effort. There will be more glitches. Once you've got your head around that, and you're kind of ready for that, then it's okay. But if you think you can just press a button, and so we carved out the resource, we carved out the time, and we got the right people on it, and we realized it was going to take some grit and determination to get over that kind of bump, that first bump, and kind of lots of support of people using the system.
Yeah. Great to be able to hear. So if we double back to the piece of the SRM really quickly, when you see pretty much what's out there in the market, when you see clients, succeeding, but also some others struggling within the space of SRM in their programs, who do you see genuinely moving the needle when it comes to SRM, right? On risk, innovation, ESG, savings, things of those nature, and why do you think that they're moving the needle on it?
Yeah. Please understand, I can't mention specific client names, but I can talk about themes.
No worries, of course. Yeah, I think the attributes are what we're after here.
Yeah. So, so if you talk about kind of the attributes and themes, I think the first thing is to recognize that it is not a one-way street. So any company who is, if you like, talking SRM but not doing is failing. And what I mean by that is there are companies who will say, hey, we're doing SRM. And I start digging. And actually what it transpires is that they are doing SPM, performance management. And then they are sort of awarding, like metaphorically, a little trophy to their favorite supplier then. That is not SRM. The SRM, the R relationship piece is central to the whole thing. The companies who get it right realize that it is not about sort of we win, you lose. It is not about 1 + 1 = 2. It is how to get 1 + 1 = 5. So if you take something like risk management, like in my world of kind of food and materials, it's a really risky place for both company and supplier, because the prices are moving up wildly and down again. Things can suddenly go into short supply or a glut. When companies get it right, is that they understand the issues about both party, and they go, how together are we going to make sure we get through this together, and that we both get value together? And few companies, I think, get it truly right.
That's interesting, and I think that's why we talk so much about the supplier experience, right? Because it is half of the equation to any good SRM program, right? So I think that's great that you lifted that particular item.
It's almost it's that acid test is, if you imagine at the end of, for example, a QBR or a big planning meeting, and it's just about stopping and thinking, when we leave the room, what are they going to say about us? Are they going to go, crikey, this company we've just been in the room with is fundamentally one of the few companies who gets us. And I think if they can leave the room thinking that kind of we got it right, if they leave the room and go, these rotters, they're talking a great game, but they're not actually doing what they say, got it wrong.
That's an excellent point. I heard not too super duper long ago at a Cievo Friends event, somebody speaking that said, treat your suppliers well. You're working with them for a reason. If you could have done it, you would have. You can't, and that's why you have the relationship in the first place, right? And I think that it's important that procurement remembers that.
Something that's good to bring it to life with a couple of examples. This is quite a long time ago. This is about, so I was working in Africa for a while, but here's one of my favorite examples of SRM at the absolute best. It was a good symptom of it. So we just set up this big banana and mango processing facility in East Africa. And we had one of the major drinks companies come and see us for an audit. And it's just one of those things. We had a catastrophic failure on that day when a big valve blew, and it blew banana puree all over the floor. And instead of this company going, oh my gosh, we're going to fail you now, the guy literally walked over to the wall and rallied everyone on the floor saying, we're going to clean up this mess together. And I'm like, that for me is a benchmark that we should aspire to, because it was a mindset. Okay, it was a tiny example. I mean, it was about cleaning, but I was like, crikey, they cared about us as a supplier. And I'll never forget that guy.
And you know what? That's one of the things that we as a technology provider can't be able to deliver, right? Which is the human interaction. And I think that it's one of the things that I admire about businesses. We're only playing our small little part. As you mentioned before, right? The SRM can be the backup or the backbone. It can be the program can be backed by technology, but it's never in the forefront. It's the humans in the forefront.
I'm going to add to that and say, don't underestimate how a great system like yours can benefit, because there's the human interaction. But ultimately, if the system is designed in a way that it's two-way, that also benefits the supplier, the supplier go, wow, this software is really easy to use. It helps me too. So kind of, if you can reframe it that way, then it adds the human piece.
Agreed. And again, I think that any good technology within SRM, if we're going to talk about the bookends, well, in between those bookends, collaboration has to be, a piece of it. Now, I'm actually curious on just maybe role playing a little bit here. Okay. Let's say that you and I, we go off and we secretly build our own SRM platform. I have a pretty strong non-compete, so I'm pretty sure that I would get sued. But beyond that, zero buzzwords allowed. We have a website. What would the 3 outcomes be, the promises that we're making on our website of our SRM solution, Simon?
1 + 1 = 5. So it's the supplier's 1 and it's the client's 1 = 5. It has a major dialing down of risk for both parties. It fundamentally delivers sustainable procurement. When I say sustainable, I don't just mean with ESG, because we have to deliver ESG together, but it stands the test of time. It's not like season to season. It's like over a long period of time. And it delivers on long-term value on things like innovation and MPD.
Love it. Fantastic. Thank you for role playing it. I mean, it sounds like a good business concept. Who knows? It might be our next gig. I want to talk quickly about something that's near and dear to you, right? Something that you work a lot with, which is cost modeling.
Yeah.
For the non-procurement nerd listeners, right, which is very few, what is advanced cost modeling, and why does it matter so much in the industry that you're working in, particularly, which is food and drink?
Of course. I mean, if you take, for example, a material, or for example, a product item that hypothetically cost $1,000, $1,000 a ton, $1,000 an item, the old school procurement person would have gone, it's too expensive. I'm on a 10% saving, old school. And hey, look, they might have ended up at 4%, so not 4% off 1,000. The procurement pro will do the appropriate cost model. Now, too many procurement people think that cost model is just a cost breakdown. So they take the $1,000 and they'll say what percentage is kind of the split of, materials and packaging and label, what have you. But their true pro forgets the $1,000 and goes, okay, what is the cost of the primary material? What is the yield of that material? What is the labor? What is the energy, et cetera, and builds it up bottom up. Then they don't challenge the profit first. In fact, they do that last. They'll ask questions like, hang on a minute, that spec of material is overspec. I'll give you a great example. I was working with a fantastic company 18 months ago, buying a material. Confidential, I'm sorry, I can't say what it is, but buying material. And we looked at it and they were buying grade A material. You could see it coming up in the cost model. And yet they were crushing that item to make into something else. I'm like, why are we using grade A material, which are beautifully formed things, where actually you can use a grade B that still tastes delicious? And we saved a shed load of money without costing the supplier a single dollar.
Interesting. And so it's focused on the cost. If we really dumb it down, right? It's focused on the cost of the good or material rather than the holistic saving on total spend, right? It's modeling, like you said, from the bottom up rather than the top down. Is that a fair way of summarizing?
Absolutely. You've got to understand all the items, all the drivers that impact the finished price. So those are cost items. You've got to forget the $1,000 and just go, what are all the things that go to make up the cost? And usually the biggest savings come in the cogs themselves. And look, occasionally one has to challenge a profit. Sometimes, and no kidding you, I will actually say to the supplier, you're not making a profit. It's not long-term sustainable. And my clients look at me in disbelief and go, yeah, if you carry on driving the client into the ground like that, they're potentially going to take a shortcut and do something silly like adulterated material, or they're not going to be in business. So that's rare. There might be 1 in 10 in times, but in procurement, we shouldn't be afraid to say that.
Fantastic insights. If you're speaking to a new business that's looking to be able to work with cost modeling, where would you say to start? Right? If their kind of maturity is not at 0, but not at 10 either.
Yeah.
Where to start?
So I did a big survey last year of training across the procurement community, and I have to say that the results were shocking. That 42% of people who we surveyed said that their training was either below average or poor. When we then delved into further in terms of what are people trained in, most people in the procurement community are trained in negotiation, maybe category management, maybe some personal development, and if they become senior, leadership. Very, very, very few people are trained in things like cost modeling. So for me, it starts with training. And this is the thing I sell more than anything else, is training of advanced cost modeling. But the training is obviously only one part, and then the trick is to actually make it live in the DNA of the business. So we're around to take the training and kind of make it part of category plans, kind of make it part of the whole way we do business.
Fantastic. No, and I mean, a growth mindset includes continuous learning, and continuous learning comes from continuous training. And it's something that we should never stop investing in for our teams as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've built a community of adventurers around you. What is that group, in practice, and how do you use that group to be able to test ideas within the procurement space?
Exactly. And I think I was happy to say kind of why I set it up and how the group works. So I guess, there are kind of introverts in this world, there are extroverts in this world, there's kind of ambiverts who are a bit of both. So I'm an ambivert. I'm very happy in my energy, but I don't need people around me all the time. But I realize that with my own business, given I don't have full-time employees, hey, look, I don't want to be sitting in a darkened room just dreaming stuff up. I want to get ideas from like-minded, busy people. So about 8 years ago, I decided to set this up. And I thought I'd do it very much, I say on my own terms differently. So no one in the adventure group gets charged a single dollar. I'm not there to make money out of them. It is there. The group is there for the value of the group. And we only want people in the group who are passionate about procurement, who are totally trustworthy, and who give into that group. And so what we'll do is we're there to help each other, and that help can play out in different sort of ways. So, for example, person A, who just springs to mind, recently moved abroad with a new job. That's quite tough. So we help that person get set up in that new country by the group giving them kind of thoughts and advice for their new role. And person B might have a really difficult assignment, and then others in the group will just give them those kind of top tips and thoughts about how to deliver it.
It's awesome to be able to have that community and community in particular during times where I think that community is most necessary. The human element is more important than ever today. You yourself talking about community, you went from not having the largest of LinkedIn profiles to being very visible. What changed for you, and what has that kind of visibility and notoriety on social unlocked for you?
Yeah, no, I'm still small fry compared to some of the big hitters. I'm tiny in this game. But if
we can't all be Tom Mills, simply Simon.
I'm a small hitter, but if I kind of look about how it's played out, so really, I was doing nothing on LinkedIn for last 20 years, and I had under 1,000 or 2 followers up until just over a year ago. And I was winning all my business through mainly referrals, people just coming to me and kind of saying, Simon can help you. What then happened is I was like, well, hang on a minute. Whilst I've got a really great client base, maybe there's a chance for me to get an even bigger, broader client base. And also is that I actually want to share my kind of best practice and views with the community to basically have this sea change of changing the whole kind of way we do procurement. And I could see that that LinkedIn for someone like me, who's a sole practitioner, is a way to reach a lot of people. So I started posting, not quite knowing how it would play out. I started practicing and getting some traction. It's like, I'm getting more traction. And people say, kind of, why do you do it? Yes, totally wrong. Of course, there's a marketing element and of course there's a sales element to it. But what's been a lovely surprise for me this year is one, the sheer amount I've learnt. Because to be able to post something on LinkedIn, you've got to really know that topic well. So there's all these topics that I didn't know anything about or that I was pretty weak on that I'd really swatted up on. So that's the first thing. The second, I'm not kidding you, I've met some amazing people from all around the world who I just didn't know. And we've had some brilliant debate about kind of meaty topics. So I'm really pleased I've started doing it. And my advice to anyone listening to this is don't copy what other people's material is. Just think about what's your niche, what experiences do you have, how can you add value to the community?
And that's what it means to be an adventurer as well, I think, is determining that you're going to continue, like I said, to have that growth mindset, to continue to learn. And it's obvious that you live and breathe by those particular principles of adventuring. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for also, encouraging our listeners to do the same. For a procurement leader that today is feeling maybe like they still are in the back office, that they're overwhelmed or underappreciated.
Yeah.
What's one step as the adventurers, that are in your community or yourself as an adventurer that you would tell them?
I think there's a couple of things. I first of all, recognize that procurement is absolutely got that seat at the table, right? We are not second-class citizens. Banish all that imposter syndrome. That's the first thing. The second thing is recognize that value comes in lots of different kind of forms in procurement. So don't just think about cost savings, think about kind of much more holistic value. I think the third thing is to recognize different procurement skill sets that you might have in your team or your colleagues. So, every procurement team needs a range of different people. You need the deal maker. You need the analyst. You need the category manager. You need the business partner. Each of those different roles is very valuable to a team. And I think also to then, if you're a procurement leader and you've got a team of, doesn't matter, 5, 10, 50, 100, is to recognize that your procurement team are in the front line a lot of the time. And that's quite tough. And you have to really help them with resilience and support and energy.
Excellent insights. Thank you for sharing as well. I think that one of the things I took away that you said there as well is that procurement needs to not see themselves as their only goal being cost savings, right? I say it all the time to businesses that are looking to collaborate with us, but broadly speaking, looking to up their game in their digitalization and their transformation of the role, right? We talk to a lot of businesses in that transitional phase, and I say very often, what is on your CEO's whiteboard? And how can you be able to link back to those 3 points that are those big 3 strategic bets that are in the business? Because that is going to be the way that you forge ahead as a player that's going to be a force to be reckoned with within the business, right? Don't think of it, don't diminish your own self to the KPI that you might have on yourself, which is creating savings. Think broader about value. And I'm super happy.
Actually, just on that note, Sam, I want to bottle what you just said there, yeah? Because a great procurement team gets what you just said there absolutely right. They go, what does the business need to deliver? And how is procurement going to help that? Rather than, here's procurement, and we're going to just kind of put a little war on us. And the great procurement teams get what you just said there, spot on.
Yeah. And I think that hopefully they after listening to today's episode, procurement professionals that are practitioners listening in, leaders listening in, feel encouraged, because I'm encouraged by today's conversation. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us as well, Simon. I could talk to you forever, but I know we need to let you go. Before we let you go, I'd love to do a quick fire round with you, something we do with all of our guests. Quick questions, 1 word, 1 sentence answers. Nothing about procurement. All about you, Simon.
Yeah.
All right. Sound like a plan?
Hit me with it.
All right. Fish and chips or bangers and mash? You're British, so I need to understand. What's best?
Fish and chips.
All right, cool. I had a really good fish and chips yesterday. I actually joined our UK team for a lunch, so I would be in the same place as you. You have an all expenses paid trip tomorrow. You're able to go with your family, by yourself, friends, as you see fit. It's on Kodiak Hub's tab. Where are you heading and why?
The eastern side of the Andes.
Okay.
So I was there early in the year on a sourcing trip with a client. It is the most beautiful place in the world.
Ah, awesome. Awesome. one sport that you are a fanatic about, or not at all?
I've changed sports a couple of times. I spent 6 years rowing a racing boat. That's a slightly younger person sport. I'm a very keen cyclist and tennis player, but obviously we've got 2 kids now, so I just have to fit my sport a bit around looking after the kids. But yeah, cycling and tennis what I like.
Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. If you weren't going to work in procurement, what would you be doing?
I would be an archaeologist.
All right. Very nice. Well, I'm happy that we were able to have you today, and I'm happy that you didn't choose rocks and bones, and instead that you chose procurement, and were able to share some of your learnings with us today here, Simon. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing at Frost Procurement Adventure, how do they do so?
So, the door's absolutely open. I love it when people reach out to me, and I will do my absolute damnedest to try and help anyone who contacts me with whatever the issue is. You can find details from me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with our guests, with our listeners today as a guest, Simon. We appreciate it and wish you well.
Thank you very much.